Welcome and hello. Back again in the Ancient Grove. I know it's been a while, folks. I am Aspicis, your host here on this fireside chat. We're going to be talking today with community member Elder Tiberius Titus Magnus. Maybe recognize him. You've watched his interview from before. And if you remember back to that interview, there was a subject that had been brought up, that was near and dear to his heart. It was this idea of a festival, a celebration. Um, the idea was of an Octoberfest or a gladiatorial match, something that combines both the art and competition that comes with the ability to have player versus player conflict, and some of the more light or heavy you know, uh, gamer tendencies around these conversations to say, have a digital mug of beer, sit down with a group of friends, listen to some player-made in-game songs, or just coalesce and group up and say, hey, you know what? I'm here, you're here, and even though we're thousands of miles apart across separate continents, or even on right next door, whatever. We can sit together and we can say, hey, um, have an experience socially inside the digital framework that is a video game. So that in mind, we're opening up this Ancient Grove chat that I have labeled in homage to the first chapter of the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, a long-awaited party. And we'll be hearing from Tiberius shortly when he gets in, and um, starting that conversation. I'm just really excited. He's put a lot of thought and effort into thinking about how to create a player-made celebration. And that got me thinking, player-made celebrations, is that something new to gaming communities? Is that something that really is cutting edge? Have we seen that before? And I don't know if you, my listeners, have been a part of gaming communities, long or short, but um, in the past, going back to various titles, whether you're talking WoW or um, Final Fantasy, Ultima Online, events, whether in game and propagated by studios or out of game and are really forced and created by player communities, have been created, have sprung up, where people get to celebrate in what we really think traditionally as more non-gamer activities. I'm talking about things like, if you've heard, people in Final Fantasy, people in WoW, people in Ultima have performed marriages online, so that their gaming communities, the people that they feel close to, get to participate in something that they feel is significant, that they enjoy, that they want. And I think that's a refreshing take on a very traditional ceremony. There's been things like funerals for people who've passed away, or people who are leaving communities, things that are more somber events, things where there's a heaviness to those tones. And I've got a few articles that I've found about funerals and the things that have happened in those areas. And if you've been around area games such as RuneScape and Deloria, the early-ish Ultima like era MMOs, you'll recognize that there have been times when studios have helped kind of stoke the fire for these social events, whether it's with some sort of in-game benefit, something that they'll host, and they'll say, hey, guess what? It's Halloween next week, and we understand that our player base has a connection to this holiday, this event, and we're going to give them a little bit extra because, hey, it's Halloween, or Christmas comes by. And rather than calling it, oh, Christmas or Christmas Eve or Hanukkah, or one of the more traditional names, All Hallows End, they'll come up with their own spin, which is always very interesting. And so, we'll talk a little bit about that as we're waiting for Tiberius, and waiting for people to really jump in and say, hey, this is what I've experienced in terms of player contribution, player events, player celebrations and what that looks like and what we feel about that. Um, so yeah, just starting from the beginning with what I've found, with what we have seen. Um, it's an article off of Mashable, fun little website, and it's 7 World of Warcraft weddings that you won't believe. And I'd like to go back to the World of Warcraft weddings because really it's not necessarily the first time that events have taken the public spotlight, but at least inside the culture that I'm a part of, it's one of the things that really you recognize that becomes a staple of those communities saying, hey, you know, have people had weddings in games? Have they had celebrations in games? And you can think back and you think of the WoW weddings and those sort of things, and it really sticks out. And and whatnot. So like the first one that I'm looking at here, um, they made a video. The YouTube user Spotcap, silly as it may seem, filmed this ceremony that they performed in the chapel in Stormwind between 2 characters, and I believe, at least as far as this article is alluding to, that these people were married in real life, but chose to perform that ceremony in the digital realm. So, I know that's just a really interesting thought there. But I hear some sounds in the background. So it looks like Senior Tiberius has joined us. Welcome, Tiberius.
Been here for a while.
Yep. Um, Now, just doing a little bit of lead-in about celebrations, because you've come to me. When we were talking inside your interview earlier, you brought up this idea of Octoberfest, and I want to give you a chance to talk about that more and get that developed. What does that look like? What do we do? And how does that work? A little bit of promotion, because events in gaming communities and in digital realms are dependent on their players, of course. And what you described to me sounded interesting, and we want to know more.
Would you be able to throw that up on screen? Because I don't want to read to the audience.
Oh yeah, no, I've got all the text pieces here, so I'll switch over in 1 second to my cast view 2. Here we go, cast view 2, and first off, and where is the image? Doop doop doop. So.
But the official name for it is Octoberfest Brewmaster Competition and Tournament of Champions, which is a little bit of a mouthful, but this is just in our own personal life. Myself and Count Voldus, we used to like to participate in Oktoberfest style events to drink and be merry. Some of my favorite beers are all Oktoberfest seasonal beers. I have German heritage, so yay that. So the inspiration was kind of there to come up with something thematically that could bring people together, that draws in sort of tourists, right? And so where we came at this was from 2 different directions. Vol is creating a guild called Boastful Brewing, which is obviously about brewing beers and other types of in-game alcohols and things like that may or may not provide buffs. jury's out on that. See COE. And then from my perspective, from my side of things, I've also talked about the Coliseum that I want to build, and I mentioned that in our county discussions, and I've talked about that endlessly for a long period of time. So I was trying to think of a way, how could we promote both of those aspects, both of those things that we're working on, both Boastful Brewing and the, Gladiators Guild that I'm working on and the Coliseum that I'm working on, as well as what would be a good attraction, what would draw people to our area, what is something that people like. Well, in the real world, people like events and people like alcohol. So combining those things was really the origin, and like trying to figure out how do we bring those two things together. So Octoberfest, as we imagine it, the Brewmasters competition, and then the rest of it is centered around the Tournament of Champions. However, just as a side note, the brewing and all that stuff goes on for the entire length of the event. So just the competition itself is going to happen at the beginning, but all of those brewery representatives, all of those crafters, and all of those people that are participating in this event will have a presence throughout the entire 5 days. It's just the focus will change from the competition in the first day or so to the tournaments between PvPers for the latter half of those 5 days.
Gotcha. Now, when so we've got the brewmasters, we've got the tournament, and if I'm interested in establishing myself in Elyria as a vendor of alcoholic wares, that works for me. And if I'm an individual who's practiced and wishes to have a competition for prove myself an able fighter, and then that works for me too. What about the people in the middle? Where do you see more or less common folk, or people who don't fall into PvP and don't fall into going into the craft of brewing, fit in?
So I'll touch on that in 1 second. I do want to add a disclaimer, since we're looking at like the front page of my document, and just keep in mind that's whitewashed because it's not in print preview. Like, it normally would be bolder colors, but yeah, just the way that you look at it when it's in editing mode, that's how it looks. Anyway, the every 5 years for 5 days, that's really subject to COE. The reason why we have it that way is because the timeline in game for COE is supposed to be relatively expedited. So there's I don't want to get on the specifics of time frames, but with it being a quicker time frame in game, I was a little worried about doing it every year or every 2 years, and that somehow equating to an event every week. You know what I mean? So that's why the time frame is what it is, and it's subject to change. It might get longer, might get shorter. It just depends on how fast the game is moving in real time. But now that I've said my little piece on that, where does everybody else fit in? The non-champions, so to speak, and the non-brewers. That's kind of a complex question because the first day of games are open to anybody. Or not the first day of games, but when the first day of the event is open to anybody. The actual tournament doesn't begin until day 2, because the brewing competition's happening day 1, which means it's basically first come, first serve for any individual to enter the Coliseum. So if you just wanted to go in there and you wanted to be like, hey, they have this big tournament all the time. It's like the Super Bowl, right? So think about where the Super Bowl plays. How often do people wish they could walk on the field, right? So in day 1, you get your chance. If you just want to go in there and spar with some friends in the Coliseum, it's basically open to the public. You can go in and you can walk around and get your feet on the soil where all the blood and tears are shed, from these amazing fighters. So that's kind of a cool thing that normal people will get to do, people that don't fit one niche or the other. Another big thing that we have aspirations for or views for. Um, we want people to explore, to sort of tour the area. So you're welcome to show up as early as you want to the event itself, but for 2 days prior, there will be a campground that is opened up for people to set up their own tents and things like that, and it's all free. So if you want to come and camp out with you and some of your mates, you can come 2 days early. You set up your tent somewhere in the fairgrounds that's sectioned off for that. And then you can go, around the countryside, go look at waterfalls, go look at the forests, go, walk through any fields that may exist that have flowers, or you can tour the town. You can go to the capital city, which is where all this is going to be hosted, or you can visit the neighboring towns and see what they have to offer. So for the first 2 days, there's sort of this tourist element to it of, go see vendors, go meet people. Additionally, during the entire course of the event, so obviously we have the sectioned area that will exist for the brewmasters, and that's so that we can actually do the competition. They will have those positions for the entire event. So if you wanted to go back there for the entire event and go, get drunk or go sample different people's brews, you're more than welcome. But we also have another area that we want set up for vendors. So these are your non-competition fighters and your non-brewers. If you're a vendor and you sell armor, right, or you sell cloth, or you sell spices or weapons, or insert any other type of thing that you sell, and you want to get your name out there, there's this area that we have set up that we have blocked off for people to set up booths. And so that gives everybody a chance to participate in some way, shape, or form. If you're a vendor of any kind, there is a sectioned area that you will be allowed to go to set up a booth in, and you'll get to sell stuff to people that are there. So, to take yourself out of the game a little bit and you go into like a real life situation, think of any kind of like comic book convention that you go to, any kind of sports convention, any kind of anime convention, any convention you can think of, board games and so on. There's always that like vendor area where you can buy, board games, anime, T-shirts, all that kind of stuff. That's how we envision it. So there's going to be an where you can buy armor, weapons, and spices, and any kind of thing as long as there's a vendor who's setting up a booth there. And we want to make that available.
Yeah, no, not. I love that concept. So, to derail us just a tinge bit and talk about Chronicles of Elyria. The way that the game designers, the studio has portrayed the scale used inside Chronicles of Elyria, it's big. To put it lightly, it's big. I don't know if people have played, a game like Atlas came out recently, and that was big. People have played, if we look at the scale of video games, whether they're single player or MMOs, and we look at how they've grown over the last 10 years, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's no different with Chronicles of Elyria. So I like this idea that, hey, every person's not able to master every single thing, and you might be able to make a blade but you can't make a hammer, or you might be able to brew a potion but not every single potion. There's no such thing as a one-man army. And since the scale is so large, I don't know how often people, traders, individuals will be able to come around and stop by and say, hey, I'm offering you a chance to purchase this bow, to purchase this set of clothes, to purchase this rare artifact. Imagine, you've gone out as an adventure and you've collected any number of relics or knickknacks or anything like that. And events like this, as Octoberfest that we're talking about with Tiberius here, are really a way in such a large scale game for people to, when they recognize this event takes place, whether it's every month in real life, every year in real life, to go to one place and say, I know that I've been hoarding, all these items, and I know that there's this event going on, and I know that I can use the people that are coming to this event to help offload or interact in such a way that I get value from the things that I've done
Hmm.
in the game. And I think that's a huge part of these social events is coming in and providing an outlet for value with the efforts that players and people have put toward this game. Anyway, getting back on track, so yeah, that I think is like you said a very important, a very critical portion of what like your Oktoberfest allows. And that tourist, I think that tourist like mentality is really interesting.
Well, I think a big note that you kind of hit on, and when you're when you're asking yourself, why would I go? Why would I necessarily travel the distance to go to this kind of event? As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one planning on an event like this. I could be wrong. I don't know exactly, but from the many people that I've talked to within the Kingdom of Onir, this is the only thing of its kind that is being fleshed out right now. Um, and so why would you come to something like this? Well, if you have a concentration of people, right? And in the scenario that you raised of, let's say you're a vendor and you have a lot of stock, right? Let's say you have slow moving inventory, or you've saturated the market that you come from with swords. So everybody in your town owns a sword already and nobody wants to buy a sword, and you're sitting on, 20 swords that you had because for whatever reason you had to level a skill or you just overmade them or what have you. Well, if you come to this event, you have the potential of offloading those swords. You have the potential of cleaning out some of your old inventory that nobody has wanted to buy from your area. So, where you couldn't make money with something, you have the potential of now making money. You also have the potential to impress people of your wares. So, if you're some nobody in podunk nowhere, but you make damn good swords, but nobody knows. Well, you come to Aquitania, you come to Oktoberfest, you become a vendor, and then people just start talking about it. People from across the kingdom, some dude in the northeast corner of the Conclave is talking about how you make really good swords when you're from, the Rhineland's southernmost corner. You know what I mean? Like, there is potential here to not only spread reputation but also earn you money. Um, which could be invaluable. I mean, if again you're in the podunk middle of nowhere and you're a master smith, but nobody knows your name, then you're not making any money. But if you can come to an event like this and you can impress people with the things that you're offering, then maybe now your name is out there. Maybe now people are traveling to you to buy your things. And so there's a little bit of, obviously there's some self-serving aspect to this because it's a big event in Aquitania. So obviously Aquitania hopefully is making money off of all of this in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, if you as an individual who are coming here play your cards right and you do right by yourself, then you could be potentially making big advances for your own personal game, right? If you make really good pieces of equipment and you show up and you're showing people that you are a master smith, or you are really good at doing X, Y, and Z, or you have a really rare spices, or insert any other kind of like special thing that you can do, and now you're getting your name out there, that helps you. So there's a little bit of that going on. Obviously this is to help us, but by pulling people together, aggregating everything in one location, it would also help everybody get their name out there.
Yeah, I like that idea of fame, that idea of recognition. Take it the other direction, and there's an infamous like aspect to it, and we don't pull ourselves back a little bit again, like before. We're still waiting as a community, as people waiting for the Chronicles of Elyria mechanics to come out. We're still waiting to understand what things like the renown, the fame systems that Soulbound Studios has talked about inside their design journals, inside their Q&As. We're still waiting to see how aspects like the religions and the base structures that they want to input into this game for players to interact with will work. But that being said, areas and events like Oktoberfest, I could definitely see them having some sort of connection to that, to those mechanics, to those areas, such that um, if you come to Oktoberfest and you're given an opportunity to perform in the Coliseum,
Hmm.
what does that look like? How does that affect those characteristics? If you sell your wares and suddenly people are talking about Glenn's donuts, and how good they taste. I've never had a Glen donut before, but I heard they were really good. They talked about it at Oktoberfest. Oh, how does that play into things? Maybe if
Hmm.
you're on the espionage, or you're on the sort of you know uh, a spy from Boardwheel is suddenly coming to this public event and finding out that, oh, this is fantastic. There's people here. They're doing things, and you know,
Hmm.
I'm toying with Boardwell here. I'm not saying they're a closed state like North Korea or some other places would be. Far be it. But I'm saying, you might, with this public space, with this celebration, there's the opportunity to lose information to a foreign state, to gain information from a foreign state, or to do other things. I think that's going to play some really interesting curves into the mechanics that the studio is going to put up. But anyway, zooming back onto, or focusing back into, Oktoberfest. Yeah, no, I like that idea, that ability to spread your renown, to develop your label. I think that's really important. I think that's really interesting.
Well,
Um,
to touch on that note, to sort of reiterate what you said, we don't know exactly what the mechanics are going to be for Reputation, but we do know that the studio has said that they want sort of some reputation system to exist, right? We already know that an influence system does exist. And you will be able to earn and lose influence as you lead your character through their destiny. Uh, that said, we don't know what mechanics will impact your influence or reputation, but it wouldn't be that outside the norm to say if everybody knows your name, then your influence goes up. But taking the mechanics out of it, some of the subsidiary things of renown are still going to exist. And what I mean by that is with the Brewmasters competition, something that we've talked about trying to do as sort of a grand prize or a partial grand prize for whoever wins the Brewmaster competition, uh, is that label will be represented within the city, the capital of Aquitania, and we will try to help have it represented throughout the county. So if you come and you win Oktoberfest for the next quote unquote subject to change 5 years until the next competition, you will have a purchase contract with the capital of Aquitania to purchase your label to have it represented in, taverns and bars throughout our county. That's the intent right now. So even if you're not getting massive renown where everybody in the game is knowing your name, well, you just got a fat paycheck from county to buy your label. And even if you're not getting some mechanical renown, you're getting renown within the game because, you know, Jimmy Tucci's blue label is represented in, all over this county. I mean, your name gets out there for people that are buying stuff. You know what I mean? So there's still a benefit to coming and doing this competition, and that lends itself even over to the martial side of things, the Coliseum itself. If you have a mercenary guild, and you come and you participate in the teams event of the Coliseum, and you win the teams event of the Coliseum, guess who's going to be looking to buy your mercenaries if they need somebody who's a good fighter? Right? So even if mechanically you're not getting a benefit, bonus experience, or anything like that, you still would have people who were at the competitions who are saying, "Hey, did you hear about Slit Throat Mercenary Guild? They did phenomenal in that competition." And I mean that could lend to more contracts or better contracts. So taking yourself out of the mechanics and saying, well, how is Soulbound Studios going to deal reputation? You still earn reputation through players, which can give you a benefit later on.
And I want to circle back on something that you were talking about right here, and maybe in a more of a oblique sense, but the social aspect of of events like Oktoberfest, and you brought this up with the Coliseum, you brought this up with the Brewmasters, um, like I said, obliquely. But so there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns. It's a very
Hmm.
complex system that Soulbones is trying to create here, and something that might stick into someone's mind when we talk about how do you judge a brewmaster's competition in a video game. I can't sip your alcohol. Are we looking at base stats? Are we looking at appearance? How do you make that? Is this a bribe game? Is this a sort of thing? But let's throwing nefarious ideas out of the way. You know, it is obvious. It is evident that you know different drinks, different liquids would have different bonuses or different effects in game. Whether that's you drink one and you get 20% drunk, rather than you drink one you get 5% drunk. You drink one and your fortitude goes up 5 points. You drink one and you die instantly. Um, though it'd be hilarious if that one won. So there are some physical attributes to things like
Hmm.
alcoholic drinks or potions or stuff like that. Um, but I like the conversation that gets brought up for it. Imagine you get 5 or 10 or 20 people who are really passionate about understanding the mechanics in game around
Hmm.
potions, around alcohol, around drinks of different kinds, be it sweet tea or Mike's Hard. And they could say, "Hey, you know how I figured this out? Hey, oh, you're just starting out. Here's how I started out." I know I really like that idea of a social aspect where people can come together, people can gamers can communicate with each other. They can share trade secrets, or they can keep trade secrets. They can gather information. They can give up information. I just wanted to hear your take on those sort of social cues, social events in terms of Oktoberfest and what you thought about them, because I think that's an often overlooked lens when it comes to gaming events in or events in gaming communities.
So, I mean, I think there's two parts to this, at least from what I'm picking up, is like how would it even function, and then what is the social aspect of it. So, as far as the like how it would function side of things, I obviously that's something subject to change just because we don't know the mechanics of it. Are they going to have a drunk mechanic in the game, or is it going to be like other MMOs where you make meals, and those meals give you different kind of buffs, right? So it could be, well, which drink gets you the drunkest the fastest, or we might change it to, what gives you the best fortitude stat one year, and then what gives you the best charisma stat another year, or something like that, just depending on how brewing works. But one of the things that I think is even more masterful about how we've arranged this is, I mean, good and bad. Right now, we're associating brew with actual like breweries brewing beer and stuff like that. But technically, you could use brew for just about any kind of culinary thing. What are you brewing right now? What's on the brew? You could be tea. It could be a lot of different things. So if the mechanics aren't quite there to facilitate doing a competition every year for beer, or rather the stats are stagnant with beer, like, oh, well, you're only ever going to get plus 5% fortitude on your beer and it's never going to change, then using brewmaster competition, really, we could change it between different kinds of culinary things. So it could be beer one year, it could be tea another year, it could be, we could cycle through stuff that way. Now, from the social side of things, the hope is, by having all of these different kinds of brews that have different stats and stuff like that, you have people coming here trying to see what is available, you know. Um, and I really hate to go down this path and sort of talk about mechanics, because we don't know how the mechanics are really going to work, or what have you. But oh Lord, let's say you come from an area where you have to have more fortitude, right? You live in a very very cold region, and so you need something that has a lot of fortitude versus somebody who lives in another area needs something else. Well, you might come to this competition and find out, oh well, somebody's making this kind of brew that gives you more fortitude, and they're actually not that far away from where you live, so it's actually feasible for you to buy some of that brew on occasion, and then it helps you in game. So from a social aspect, not only do we hope and we're trying to facilitate purchase agreements, and people buying and selling and in the transition of money back and forth. But there's also nothing saying that individuals can't buy and sell recipes, right? So you show up to the brewing competition and you really like a brew that somebody has, but they're on the other side of the kingdom from you, and there's no feasible way for you to buy stuff from them on a regular basis. You might walk up to that brewmaster and say, "Hey, man, I am so far away from you. We're not going to be competing if we have the same recipe. Will you let me buy your recipe?" And then that opens up a completely other world, because we know for a fact right now, Soulbound Studios has said that you will be able to buy and sell recipes. If you're in the same guild, you can share recipes with your other guild members and stuff like that. So if you're a brewmaster and you know that there's no way you're going to be selling, kegs to this other gentleman because they live on the other side of the kingdom, and there's no way that you're going to get your brew that way, you also know that there's not going to be any competition between the two of you. Why not think about selling your recipe for a larger price, obviously, because it's your recipe, but, let's say one keg is 100 gold and you sell your recipe for 1,000 gold. I don't know. That's something that you'd have to come to an agreement with whomever you're trying to sell your recipe for, but that opens up another avenue of not just buying the product itself, but the transmission of recipes. Hell, two brewers are next to each other. One specializes in, you know, one kind of brew that is the almost opposite of another kind of brew. Maybe those two talk to each other and they say, "Hey, man, that goes down a different tree in the skill tree than we went down. I wouldn't mind having my hands on that recipe. Would you like to trade recipes?" And then you've got the two brewmasters saying, "Hey, well, there's no way I'd get down your tree because the amount of time I'd have to spend going down that would detract from what I've done currently. So yeah, I'll take that deal." And then you trade recipes. So there's a lot of possibility that gets inserted there, and it's up to the player. And that's one of the good things about this is the social aspect of players interacting with players. It's up to you to make the best of your situation. So I'm not going to be walking around saying, "Hey, you should talk to Joe Blow over there and, maybe trade recipes." Just walk around, talk to people, see what kind of brews other brewmasters are doing. See if there's maybe some special attribute to someone else's brew that you have not unlocked or didn't know you could do, and then talk to them about it. You might find that someone might explain, "Oh, well, if you add this herb, it'll do that," and then now you can make it. So that's more the social aspect that we hope to foster is, you know, not only bringing people into a location where there's a lot of buying and selling going on, but also if you're there and you can benefit from talking to other people, go do it. Go talk to other people. Learn how to make the scimitar versus the longsword. Talk to the different people about how they do things, and conversely, that would hopefully help the world itself. Soulbound Studios has talked about innovations in all things that are researchable. So, what's one of the best ways to innovate? Think about real life. When scientists talk to each other about their research, what happens? You have research breakthroughs. If every country isolated themselves and never talked to each other, didn't write scientific journals, didn't spread the knowledge of what they've discovered or what they have found to not work, then you would have people repeating the same mistakes. You'd have people doing the exact same thing. Eventually you'd get there, but it would take a hell of a lot longer. So that's kind of, the intrinsic idealistic view of it is, idealistically, if I bring all these people together and they're communicating, maybe this time next year we have things that are 10% better. And then the next year they're even better. And over the long haul, the long course of the game, maybe we have some innate value or some huge advantage over surrounding regions, because we know, well, within 500 square miles of my city, everybody is about 50% ahead of everybody else in the world in research, because we all communicate and we share knowledge. You know, Probably not going to happen, but that's the idealistic view of it.
Yeah, no, and I like that. I like that transmission of knowledge, that sharing, that community-like approach. It's not that every one man's an island. It's not that everybody's in it together, but it's this idea that we can be working together. We can be
Mm-hmm.
sharing information. I think that's really important, and that works well on the brewmaster side. That works well on the culinary or whatever that ends up looking on. All like you said, mechanic dependent. All like you said, dependent on what the game ends up looking like and how that works. I must switch over to your day 2, day 3 text from your little pamphlet you gave me, and we're gonna look similar questions, similar environment, but now inside the competitive player versus player like area. And
Mm-hmm.
this gets complicated really fast, just like brewmaster and the brewing mechanics and we don't want to get hung up on mechanics because
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing written in stone. Well, you can make the argument there's never anything ever written in stone in video games because I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
much you've seen from the release to the death of a video game. Things will change at the whim of a studio one way or another. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but with your timeline here, you've got days 2 and days 3 for official games, for things that are more structured about fame, about the influence system, depending on how that works, and the opportunities for these town, county,
Mm-hmm.
duchy supported teams to really go head to head in a player versus player environment. So I wanted to give you a chance first off to talk about, when we talk about coliseums, when we talk about player versus player, what do we think about those things, and what's really exciting to you about the blood and sand of the Coliseum floor, and then we'll branch off into the similar conversations as we had about when we talk about player versus player, what are some things that might play into this? What are some things that might interact with that? And how does hosting these events, this idea of Coliseum battles benefit a community, or how does that change the relationship in communities and different stuff like that? So first off, we're talking Coliseum, we're talking PvP. What does that mean for you, and what gets you excited about that?
So, um, personally, I'll be running pretty much everything, so I probably won't get to participate myself. Um, but I'm an accountant in real life, and so I have a business mind in my head, and so I want to personally try to take a full advantage of sort of the tourism aspect of this, trying to get people happy, get people drunk, get people spending money. Um, and that's the benefit for my county is not only having the renown that these things happen, that these competitions exist, but hopefully, if they become big enough, then you're pulling, counts come to visit to see, what are the different mercenary groups doing? Who are the best mercenaries? You're getting duchies that come because they want to be known as the best duchy that has the best fighters, and you know, maybe even, and I don't know that it'll ever get to this point just because of distances and so on and so forth, but maybe kingdoms come out and kingdoms field some people. Now that hasn't been written into this because I don't necessarily see that happening, at least not for a long time. But future goals, right? Maybe the kingdoms start saying, "Hey, we want to host people that come and do these competitions." And as sort of a side note, what I've thought about doing, and this is all groundwork that we're laying right now. I've got to have people. So if anybody's interested on being event managers or wants to be a part of this, contact me. Because I need people. I can't do this all myself. But you know, I want it to be put on Twitch, right? Like I want to record these and post them on YouTube so that when the competitions are happening and you're seeing these mercenary groups fight against each other, and presumably these mercenary groups are fielding very good fighters, it's entertaining. It's not an esport, but it's like a minor version of an esport that you've got these people in here and they're fighting back and forth. And hey, if you're someone that likes commentating, hit me up. I'll take you as a commentator. And then when we record it, you're sitting there saying, "Ah!" and Billy dodged the sword. Like trying to pump people up. And not only are you getting your renown out there in game, but now everybody knows that holy shit, Billy is really good at dodging stuff. You know what I mean? And now your name's out there, your character names in Twitch and YouTube and all these other places. So there's kind of the personal aspect of things of what I hope to get out of it. From an individual standpoint, think of all the things that you could gain. Now, obviously, it's sort of predicated on the fact that you are in the game and you're relatively good at the game. But even if you're not, the best fighter, if you can only get, halfway up the leaderboards, your name is still out there saying that you've made it through more than half the people, right? And so when you're, doing a job for your mercenary guild and you're trying to dictate price with somebody, you can say, "Hey, man, like I was the number 4 seed in the Octoberfest in Aquitania. Like, I'm obviously a good fighter. I think I can charge a higher price than that." So, from a player standpoint, obviously, if you win the competition and everybody knows your name, knows your team name, knows what mercenary guild you're for, that can get you a lot of contracts or a lot of notoriety, more power to dictate price. But basically anybody that participates in the competition, whether it be for fun or for personal gain, can gain something from the competition. uh, Now, to touch on the sort of the county duchy thing, those aren't going to happen until day 4 and 5. Day 2 and 3 is going to be I say individual competitions because the intent was more like the thought was more individuals are going to be doing these, but you could also have organizations. Uh, and that's why when you read the wording that's on here, I say, registration is going to end 2 days prior to the actual competition so that we can place everything in brackets. Not only is so that gives us time to actually place people in brackets, but that also is so that we can get an idea of what kind of people are out there. Are we all individuals in this competition, or do we have, 8 mercenary guilds that have 4 fighters that want to fight? And if that's the case, then we can pit all 8 of those 4-man teams, against each other in their own brackets. So, day 2 is all individuals. The first half of day 3 is individuals, and the latter half of day 3 are, these mercenary guilds fighting each other. So day 2 and day 3 is built to be a little bit more flexible with how the actual tournament is going to run, and it's predicated on what our admission is. How many people have registered, what is the demographic of those registering. Uh, and as an additional note, um, if you are a really good fighter and you have a duchy that wants you to fight on behalf of the duchy, and so you're going to be joining the competition on behalf of the duchy, that does not preclude you from participating in all the other events. So if you are going to go in and you're going to fight for a duchy, you can also fight for a county, and you can also fight as an individual. There's nothing that says that you can't fight at all 3 levels. That's up to you registering and whether or not you think you're a good enough fighter to fight at all those levels. Uh, and the one caveat with any of that is if you're fighting for a duchy, you need to be a county within that duchy, and as an individual, it doesn't matter. If you're a county, you can't like flop between people. So like you can't fight for more than one county. That would be weird and stupid. But anyway, you can fight at any of the levels.
So
Um,
so the when operators when contestants are fighting for a county, a duchy, or a kingdom, if you get to that point, as a representative of that area, you're saying they need to basically have an agreement, or there's some sort of thing, they're fighting for the glory of the county, the glory of the duchy almost. It's not necessarily, I guess, when I'm trying to specify, or what I'm trying to get an answer from you about is there a difference in your mind, to fighting as an individual, fighting as a county, fighting as a duchy? Where are the benefits? Where would you make a decision there? Or is it just kind of, these are the brackets we throw in because someone who's county supported might have been paid by a county and coming from a county pool? Somebody who's an individual, that's just anybody off the street. They could be from Boardwell, they could be from Kairos, they could be from anywhere. They just came to test their skills, and if you're participating on, say, a duchy level, that's something, you're probably almost like state funded, or something. That I don't know if you're expecting different benefits for winning each of those levels, or if do you feel what I'm getting at here?
No, I didn't catch any of that.
So
You went
basic.
robotic on me. Like
Oh,
I literally couldn't hear what you were saying through pretty much any of that.
gotcha. Ah, yes, and I see the message now. You're Robo. Well, if I'm coming in clear, the question is, what is the incentive to participate at different levels? Um, what 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 does each party at different levels, what could they receive? It's not necessarily what will they receive, but if I'm representing a county, why should the county? I'm assuming if you represent a county, there's some agreement between the county and yourself. If you're representing a duchy as a fighter, there's some agreement between the duchy and yourself,
So
and what does that look like?
I don't necessarily know or think there's an agreement between the duchy and me or the county and me. Uh, the way that I look at this is how do you benefit if you come and you rep yourself, right? And what does it mean to compete at the different levels? Now, I got to take a step back and I got to think of like real world, right? Where you talk about the Super Bowl, right, versus high school football. Well, when you're talking about Super Bowl teams, let's just equate that to a duchy. They have more money that they can buy more talent. So maybe a duchy goes out and they say, "Hey, I know of these four fighters that aren't duchy military, but I'm going to pay for their services, right? I'm going to ask them to have their mercenary guild within our duchy, and I'm going to request that they, basically participate on behalf of our duchy in all the tournaments that we have." So you've got like amazingly good fighters, right, that are repping a duchy. At a county level, you might have really good fighters, right? And then at the individual level, you have a lot of the more amateur people. And that's not to say that somebody who's repping a duchy can't also compete in the individuals arena, albeit if it's way too lopsided, we might change how the brackets work, where there's like amateur league and pro league, or if we have enough people sign up from the county duchy level, we might segregate that and say, hey, these are the individual competitions for the county duchy, and then these are the individual competitions for everybody else, just to make it more fair. But obviously, when you think of any like real life sport where you go from you know um, the lower end to the higher end organizations, you have presumably better talent. You have people that are better at the game, because you as a mayor are probably not going to be able to shell out the kind of money that a duchy could for really good fighters if it comes down to buying fighters. You know what I mean? So, uh, presumably, the county dynamic is going to be a lot harder than playing at a duchy level. I mean, I'm sorry, playing at a county level is going to be harder than playing at the sort of individuals level, and then playing at the duchy level would be harder than the county level. Um, and so I think of any kind of game that exists out there that has tiered brackets of like bronze, gold, platinum, and diamond, and all that kind of stuff. Your better players are playing at the higher end. Presumably, your better players are going to be playing in the Super Bowl, i.e., the four teams that get fielded by duchies. So that's how I kind of look at it that way. Is as you move up in the system, depending on who you're fighting for, the matches are going to be maybe more interesting because you have better fighters that know the mechanics better. They're you know, a county is not going to want to pick a bunch of amateurs to fight for them. They're going to want to pick veterans. So the fights should be more interesting. They should be more skill based. So they're more interesting. Uh, and then when you win, you get to say, "Oh well, don't attack my duchy. I've got the best fighting teams in the world, or in the area around us. I'm the best. I've got the best teams out of everybody within four duchies of me." And same thing with counties. Like, well, we've got the best fighters, and compared to the next nine counties surrounding us. So there's a little bit of a, notoriety there. There's you get your Super Bowl ring of, oh well, we won the competition. We're the better fighters in the region, which has its own benefits of saying, well, if you want to attack us, you can, but you know that we have the best fighters around. So it gives you a little bit of innate protection. Maybe, if everybody knows that your duchy is fielding the best fighters, then it's a little bit of a deterrent to attack your duchy, because we know that you can defend yourselves, and if you come to attack us, maybe we can't defend against it. Who knows? Um, So there's a little bit of political impact there, between counts and duchies of, well, if you can say, well, we have the best fighters, if you want to try to attack me, you're welcome to, but we're probably going to win. So there's some political stuff there, behind the scenes that people could take advantage of. And then just from, the front side of things, let's say you're working for a county for these competitions, but you are a mercenary, right? You're a mercenary that was invited to, rep the county and you accepted. Well, that means when the competition's over, you're not fighting for the county. You're not part of the county military. You're still a mercenary. You were just living in that county and asked to rep that county. Well, guess what you get to do? You get to say, well, dude, I was the number one spot. Myself and my team, we won the competition for this county. Like, come at me. Like, give me my due. Pay me more because we're going to be able to stand behind our name. Like, you want your wagons defended? They're going to get defended with our crew. So there's a lot of benefits for anybody that participates in the competition after the competition's over, which is why I don't think that the competition itself really needs to give anybody some big prize, for their winning. That said, we have kind of tried to discuss with some people back and forth of like what would be a good prize, what would be a good thing to like try to do. And not knowing mechanics, not knowing like monetary systems or how all that would work, not knowing what kind of money that this event would pull in, I can't guarantee, you're going to get $2 million. I can't put on paper that there's any set amount of anything that's going to be provided. Anybody who wants to participate, know that there is desires to try to put some kind of reward out there to, help incentivize the competition, but we just don't know what that's going to look like. The only thing that I have had I can say that I want to do, there's a little bit of mechanical dependency here, but not a lot. These champions of this event, what I want to do for those champions at a minimum is basically hang banners everywhere that says that so and so won this competition, so and so won this competition. And so if you think of like, well, you won the Super Bowl and you're driving around the United States, well, what if there were billboards everywhere that said that your team won the Super Bowl, right? Some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it, but your name is out there. People are talking about it. And so it's the same kind of principle here that if you're repping a duchy team and that duchy team wins a competition, and then, whenever you're traveling through Simalut Unum, which is my county, it's a triple county, every town you go to has got, a banner on the courthouse that says so-and-so won the duchy event, so-and-so won the county event, so-and-so won the individuals event. No matter where you go within our triple county, your name is out there. And I'm willing to bet that, whoever won the competition, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to put some placard or something up that says our county won this competition in, 1363 or, whatever the date is. And there's even been talk between the different counts and the duchies, if it gets popular enough, to say, all right, hey, if you want to participate in this event, one of the concessions that you're making in your agreement to participate is if you lose, if you win or you lose, it doesn't matter. You have to put up these 3 banners that say who won the competitions. So even, if there are 9 counties that participate and they've all agreed to field a team and they've agreed to this contract that we have in game, every single one of them within their county, at least their county capital, they have to put up those 3 banners that say so-and-so won the duchy event, so-and-so won the county event, and so-and-so won the individuals event, even if they didn't win it. So at that point, no matter where you go, as long as it was one of those 3 counties, you can see your name repped if you were the winner. So that's sort of one of the non-monetary benefits that I've tried to work into this, and I've tried to have conversations with people about doing. Again, mechanical stuff, so it's hard to really talk about that, but that's how we're kind of leaning into it, is trying to build up people's reputations.
Yeah, it sounds very mechanic dependent, but I like you said, I have every belief, every faith here that something like that is going to be possible. Whether it's I'm not saying there's carving and statue making and the ability to make paintings. But what is an Oscar other than a lump of material? What is a Tony other than a lump of material? And so as long as you can make a special lump of material as a trophy, that or a series of banners that say,
Hmm.
"Hey, congratulations, dodging Doug, best dodger in the damn county, damn duchy." Gosh, see, could have got that alliteration in there. That plays in a lot because myself, other people will bend over backwards just for the fame,
Hmm.
just for the recognition. I mean, that is how human nature works. That's how we go, and I love that idea. I
Yeah.
love that concept there. You brought this up earlier, and I'm going to quickly allude back to it as we move closer to the second section that we discuss that we're going to discuss here. But you talked about commentators and this idea of people coming in, and if they have the voice, the mind, the will to, they can commentate
Hmm.
commentate these fights, and really describe what's going on, whether it's for people listening, people in the arena, whatnot, for videos, for later reviews. But that really uncovers, this idea of like a meta game.
Hmm.
Ideas
Well,
of ideas
sorry,
of
I wasn't trying to
PvP.
interrupt.
Yep, no, I'll give you your time for sure. Ideas of PvP. There's always this dance
Mhm.
amongst cultures, amongst groups, amongst people of what is best. How do I win? If somebody comes to me with a ball and chain, is it best to have a net and shield? Do I go in with two knives? How about the reach? Is the reach good? Is the reach bad? How do
Uh-huh.
I pay my speed? And that really gives a lot of opportunities, just like with any other sport, just like watching an MMA fight or football game or hell, underwater basket weaving. You can look at these meta ideas, these meta principles, and you can kind of determine and learn even what's going on and why things are working and why things aren't working. If I
Hmm.
was participating in a Coliseum fight and it wasn't my active turn to fight, maybe I'm next up. I would love to sit there and see, oh, this guy's coming in with a long sword, and I see that, he's got a really good reach, and oh, this is how they got through it. The opponent, with their shield and short sword had to stay really close so that he couldn't
Hmm.
effectively use the long sword or this or that. And I think that plays a really interesting learning angle, like we talked about with the brewmasters and the whatnot of being able to trade these experiences, this is how this works, this is how that works, and learn, um, expand, share those experiences.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Um, so we talked about reputation, and it's a little bit of backpedaling, but the commentator side of things, the commentators will exist alongside recording. So even if mechanically we can't hang banners that say this person won the competition, there's nothing saying that we couldn't also have the YouTube videos that said, "Here's the winner of it," blah 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 year competition. So you still can have that notoriety and getting your name out there. And if it's as popular as I want it to be, then you have a lot of people watching it anyway. And as sort of a subsidiary effect to note on what you were talking about of, oh, well, thinking about reach and what kind of weapons people are using and so on and so forth. Um, you know, trying to maximize any situation. If these are recorded and they're put on YouTube, let's say you have a lot of longsword fighters and you know that your neighbor next door uses sword and shield and stuff. How could you learn maybe how to get around that with a longsword versus swords and shields? Well, hey, we know of this YouTube channel that has all of these different fights that happen, and last year's winner used a longsword, and last year's second place team used swords and shields. Why don't we watch that fight and see how they might have maneuvered around those shields, right? So you could use it for your own game sense of being able to see. It's like people that watch competitive Overwatch players do VOD reviews and things like that, where they talk about, oh, well, here you should have used Winston's jump, and when you landed, you should have punched. That way, you get that free hit in as you're landing. Oh, well, shit, I never thought about that. So by watching these reviews, watching these competitions, you might learn how to, work for things. uh, you know, with the game For Honor, they have these streamers that stream how they play things and they talk about how they play things. Oh, well, when you see that the Shinobi is going to do this kind of thing, I needed to do this, right? So you might learn telegraphing by watching this kind of competition, seeing the commentators talk about stuff. So there's some subsidiary benefits that are a little bit harder to obtain because obviously that would be you watching playback and trying to see how stuff is working on, but it might give you some insight that you wouldn't have had otherwise. But to get back on track, talking about day 4 and 5, day 4 and 5 are broken up ideally into basically county duchy. So day 4 county, day 5 duchy. And so on day 4, you'll have the duchy, or I mean the county brackets, where all the county teams get fielded in different aspects. And so where we have the categories that we've looked at right now, and how we kind of want to lay this out, are best duo, best 4-man, and best 8-man. And the reason why we wanted to do it that way is to get more of sort of like a dynamic environment. The army of two. Who has the best two fighters, and then when you have a team of 4 versus a team of 8, the play styles completely change. When you have to worry about a lot of people in front of you, a lot of things going on, your tactics might change completely. Also, there's no limitations on weapons so long as they're melee, so you could get very, very diverse opponents, a bunch of great hammers, or you might have a guy with a great hammer, a dude with a mace, and then everybody else is sword and shield, and they're trying to do sort of a hammer and anvil sort of tactic. So your dynamic could change depending on your team composition, and obviously the more people that you have fielded within reason, it's going to change the aspect of fighting. Something else that we've thought about that I have in my rules that aren't up on the board right now. When you get to the 8-man, and when we talk about day 5 and when we look at the duchy, I believe the comment is made there as well. You can have archers or ranged people, but it's no more than two people on the team, and the reasoning for that is so that it just doesn't get, oh well, let's run 4 shield people and just sit behind, have the archers sit behind the shield and blah, 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 because that would get annoying. So there's no more than a max of two ranged people in any 8-man fight or greater. And then to touch on something that was commented on the day 4, and you don't have to go back to it, I'll just say it. We do have aspirations to expand this depending on demand and our location geographically. So geographically right now, just to toot my own horn, I guess, I'm a very, very high IP count. And right now I've been picking pretty consistently with a border on an ocean, so having water access. If that's the case, then we might toy around with the idea of also having a naval competition of some sort where you have people bringing their boats out and you fight over water. Now, obviously, the dynamic of that is going to be completely different because you're going to have more than 8 men per boat, depending on the class of ship. Um, but we've thought about adding that as a thing. We've also thought about adding mounted competitions as something that could exist, but again, having to think about the mechanics of it, how much space we would need, and so on. And then, having, if we have a lot of demand for archers, a lot of people that are saying, hey, we're ranged people, but you can only have 2 on a team, and that's only at the county and duchy level. Like, where do we fit in? We've thought about including an archery competition as well, just to see who's the best shot as an archer. And, but that's all to be determined. I can't really speak to that right now. I'm just trying to focus on the essentials and not spread myself too thin. Otherwise, none of this will happen. Moving on to day 5, because you have it up on screen, and if you want to interrupt me, please do. I know that I'm a little long-winded, and I've got a lot of information to get through. But do you have any comment or anything that you'd like to add about the
Nothing too specific. I mean, I like the idea of naval battles and archery competitions. I mean, for cost, naval battles could be expensive depending on whether or not these ships sink or not. But there's ways to get around that, and you can do naval battles. Arguably, a boat race is the same as a naval battle. Anyway, going out on a square there, but there's different directions to take things so that people don't lose too much value, or it's not out of reach of certain individuals as well. And the idea of like an archery battle, I mean, you throw a chicken in the air, and the first one to shoot the chicken from 50 paces away wins. That could be something, and I like the diversification because we're talking about in-game 5. So to go back a little bit, at that screen you said oh gosh, I can't remember what it said now. It was like once a month or every once a year, 5 day celebration. And what does that look like in game time as opposed to out of game time and all this
Mhm.
this other stuff. We're talking out of game time of
Mhm.
approximately what?
So the in-game time that I had on there was every 5 years for 5 days. Um, oh, it's going to be really interesting to look at. I'm thinking, maybe once a quarter. So for those of you that don't know what a quarter is you divide the year of 12 months into four equal pieces. So it'd be every 3 months there's a competition. If that's too fast or too much, maybe we do it twice a year. If that's too much, maybe we only do it once a year. My hesitancy to do it only once a year is that Soulbound Studios has kind of said the way that their characters are going to die is it's like you have a new character every year, give or take some months. So if your character is naturally aging and you can't really use your character anymore after 1 year, it's kind of lame because then your character's only getting to fight once a year, or I mean once per lifetime. So you can't really like boast yourself. You can't have that success story, the Cinderella story of somebody who, maybe came in last in the first competition, but now they're on top. You know what I mean?
Not to mention
So,
you'd have to kind of schedule your new character life in a time. Imagine you always start your new character somewhere around January,
hmm
and this event takes place in October every year. A 90-year-old individual every single time, just the way that the cycles work out, that would be kind of sad.
hmm
But okay. Um, anyway, getting to the point, so if we're talking like a 1 day or so in or out of game time frame for an event like this, multiple day event in game, in terms of managing and organizing that, a lot of these side acts that you're talking about, they take a degree of time, but they could be cut off. You could make them, manageable, and well,
hmm
that'll all, of course, like you said, be dependent on the mechanics as they're developed by the studio, and that all sounds interesting. It
yeah,
all sounds good, and it plays back into what we were talking about earlier with the brewmaster and the Coliseum, the PvP aspects of this
hmm
social sphere, this get to interact, get to learn, get to develop, and really get your name out there, whether that's for your duchy and your
hmm
county to have the best archers, the best fighters, um, and that little protective sphere that fame gives you, or or target that the fame gives you, one of the two.
hmm Now, on as far as scheduling is concerned, there's a lot of flexibility there. There's nothing saying that we have to do it on said day every year. We easily could say, okay, well, how about we try to do it on like Labor Day weekend or something? Try to pick a weekend or a holiday that most people aren't going to be traveling, and say, okay, well, how about this be like a 3-day weekend, and then we do it over the course of a 3-day life, like a real life weekend. That way it's not impeding on anybody during the week that they're not up at 11 o'clock on a weekday trying to play a video game. So there's some maneuvering around there, and obviously I'm an accountant in real life, so I would rather not be up at 2 in the morning on a weekday trying to do a competition. So trying to schedule it around a weekend, trying to get a long weekend would be preferable. So that's nice. And then as far as the ship thing is concerned, one of the reasons why I think it might happen and why I'm optimistic about it, and I think it would be a cool thing, um, within the duchy of the Conclave of Artois, which I'm a count in, we have another count named Black Blob, a little shout out, who wants to focus on naval power and building ships and things like that. And one of the things that I've talked about is trying to help supply him with resources. So anybody that wants to be a forester, hello, right here. I mean, I've got 3 counties that I'm trying to devote on trying to eat up forests as much as possible. So we'll have a lot of job for you. Uh, but if he's making a lot of ships, and if ships get outdated, which presumably they will, there's nothing saying that I can't enter a friendly agreement with him because we are very close, where he just gives me his old outdated ships and we use those, or maybe I buy them from him for a cheap price. So rather than having people field their own boats, we have, oh, well, the S class cutter, we've got 4 of them, so we limit it to a duchy competition. So duchies, we need 4 duchy teams. You're going to have your boats provided to you. All the other equipment you have to provide yourself. And so then it cuts down the cost on the duchies so that they don't have to buy any ships and stuff. And we still get this great spectacle of seeing boats fight each other. But again, mechanical driven, just letting the audience know that I'm a forward thinking individual. I'm very flexible. These are things that I would like to do. There's no guarantee that they will happen. um, but if anybody has interest in those kind of things, they want to see those happen, feel free to reach out, and maybe you be the leg runner on it. And if you can get things to line up, then we'll definitely have it. um, I'm not limiting the possibilities. I'm not set in stone with this is how it has to function, this is how it has to go. I just want it to be successful. I want it to be a boon for my region, and I want it to be a boon for all the people that are involved.
Yeah, as we would hope for anyone who hosts an event like this, who puts their hardworking man hours towards coordinating and building up whatever resources or individuals it takes to host something like this. Yeah, we definitely look forward to seeing this. The idea of a coliseum. As we kind of close down, because we just got through day 5 Coliseum event. We talked about the Brewmaster. We talked about a few of the ancillary ideas and topics. Um, so as we wind down, as we get ready to close this out, because we've been talking for about an hour 15 minutes. I imagine you would be open to opening this up to like-minded individuals, I guess is the way I'll put it. I started out this cast talking about different events that people have hosted across different games. Just very quickly, describing some of them: weddings in WoW or in Ultima or in Final Fantasy. Fun fact: Final Fantasy, actually, the developers will support your wedding in the game for a price. They'll give you in-game content, program NPCs to do your ceremony. All costs money, but that's the way that the world seems to be turning, and stuff like that. But so I imagine if someone, if this takes off, if people get excited, if it brings people around, and someone wants to host a party, they'd have the ability to rent out a building inside your town while the Coliseum, while Octoberfest is going on, and host their party in town. If people are coming around for any number of events, whether they want to host a party or a wedding, or someone has described that after this Coliseum they're gonna hang up their gamer hat and no longer be able to participate with the community. Something like a funeral may be held for their poor soul, which I always love that concept, that ability for us to mirror reality in video games. That's very interesting. Yeah.
So the document that I have, anybody who's interested, can contact me. I'm Spartan ATL, SPARTAN ATL, number sign 9532. I should say that again. Spartan ATL 9532. On Discord, just send me a message. Be more than willing to talk to anybody about this kind of stuff. You had mentioned people having weddings and things like that. One of the benefits about having this sort of competition is obviously we're going to have tavern owners and we're going to have innkeepers and stuff. Even though a field will be provided for people to set up tents free, if you wanted better accommodations, if you had more wealth than other people and you want to stay more lavishly, feel free. Know the city, go into the city, contact inn owners and tavern keepers, and find a room that suits your needs. And I, as the count of the county, have no bearing over that, so it's not like I'm making any money or anything. But that's one of the things that I hope to promote in tourism, is that all of these shopkeepers and everybody that are in my city are also getting the benefit of having people visit. So if you want to have a wedding out of somebody's inn or tavern or garden or something like that within our city because it's beautiful to you, then by all means reach out to those people and say, hey, this event's going on, we want this to happen, and I'm sure they'll facilitate for a quote unquote price. uh, so I think there's a lot of opportunity here from across the board for people, not only the citizens of my county and our capital city, but also, all of the merchants and everybody else that I hope come to set up a booth.
Yep. Yeah, no, and there'll definitely be fun and games and excitement all around, I'm sure. Um, and I'll work with you, Spartan. I think with your permission, of course, we can take your Word document, create a PDF for it, and post it to, at minimum, the Conclave, the Kingdom of Vornair, and
Hmm.
the SBS
Hmm.
Discords, so that they're accessible through there. And I've got to figure out how. I don't have a lot of experience embedding documents into YouTube
Hmm.
videos, but there should be a way to do that as well. So.
Well, if you, I don't know, this might be a little bit of editing. I say you could flash it on the screen, so if anybody's watching it, they can just pause it and read through it, as well as, including it as a PDF in the Discords. But we can talk about that offline. If we're closing out, I would like a closing statement.
Oh yeah, no, no, definitely. We're getting close to the end here. I was going to ask you if there was anything else that was near and dear to your heart, anything that you wanted to talk about that I haven't given you a chance to discuss yet.
As far as the Oktoberfest competition is concerned, I have a little bit of something that I'll touch on at the very end because that's the crux of this video. But I'm open for recruiting for anything. I have leadership positions within my county. We've got some mayors. I have 3 counties, so more mayors, more merrier. Anybody who's interested on a place to live and stay, by all means, join. I think, and I mean, this is the horse calling himself a horse. I think I'm a pretty nice guy, pretty easygoing. I'm willing to help people. My view on things are, if you are successful as an individual, then I reap your success, right? That's not to say that I leech off people or anything, but if you are successful and you are, creating a lot of business, you are creating a lot of money, you are, have a lot of people buying things from you, you're making good product. Not only is that great for you, but it's also good for the place that you live in. Because if you're creating notoriety, if you're creating good products, that means everywhere around you is reaping off the benefit of that. If people are traveling to you to buy a special kind of armor, then they're traveling through other parts of my county, which means presumably maybe they're buying food in other parts of my county. So I want my people to be successful. And my success is going to be off having the most successful county. At least that's how I envision it. So as far as facilitating things, if you come to me with, well, here's my business proposition. I'm just a normal Illyrian. I don't have any property or anything, but this is what I want to do with my business, and this is how I'm going to do it. Then I'm inclined to, work with you on trying to get a property deed within my county at a favorable price. Something really cheap that you couldn't get anywhere else, because I know that you have a good head on your shoulder. I know that you're going to be successful because you've come to me with a plan and you said that this is what you want to do, and we don't have 100 other people that are doing it. Um, so by all means, anybody, any walk of life, normal citizen all the way up to a mayor, if you want to participate in any of these things, then by all means contact me. Maybe we can find a place for you, a home for you. And then to touch on the Coliseum itself, hey, commentators, people that want to, manage all the sword competitions or all the archery competitions or all the ship competitions, or somebody who just wants to manage, the crafting stuff or the merchants or the brewing competition or whatever facet of the competition, anybody who wants to participate in any level, feel free to send me a message and talk about it, because I have high aspirations. I have this grand thing that I want to do, and I can do more if I have more people that I can rely upon. If I don't have to micromanage everything, if I can say, I trust you, I want you to run this, and you've done a good job, then I can basically say, hey, make sure that this competition fits in with everything else. You work on the bracket, you do this. You love doing that anyway. I'm not telling you what to do. It's your thing. It's your baby. It's your joy, your passion. But we're all reaping the benefits of the whole competition. And the more people that I have that can do that, that can champion their own thing, that want to do their own thing, that are impassioned about an aspect of it, the bigger this competition can be, the more value we can get out of it. So anybody who's interested in any aspect of it, feel free, send me a message, whether it's big or small. The more people that we have that are reliable working on it, the more that we can do. So I look forward to that because I would like to do more rather than less.
Well, you've heard him, folks. He's set up the smoke signal. The bat sign is in the sky. Interested parties do reach out to Albert, Elder Tiberius Titus Magnus, um, and yeah, we hope to hear more. So we're gonna wrap up this video here. I will post it to YouTube shortly for your viewing pleasures in the future. But before we go, I'm just going to go through my more or less standard outro here. For those of you who has been listening, this has been an episode of In the Ancient Grove, a more or less casual take on events, subjects centered around the Chronicles of Elyria, community mechanics, games. We've been talking about Elder Tiberius Titus Magnus's idea for an Octoberfest, a brewmaster competition matched paired with a Coliseum player versus player like event. If there's any questions that have come up, if we didn't answer anything to your liking, feel free to shoot us a message on Discord, in the Conclave Discord there, and I'm sure Tiberius would not be opposed to doing another video, whether it's about the Colosseum or other things when it comes to Chronicles of Elyria. If you or an individual have some ideas about Chronicles of Elyria, about the mechanics, about things like the deviant system, crafting, the latest state of Elyria, feel free to reach out to me, Aspicis, and we'll try to set something up inside a forum like this so that we can discuss it. We can get excited about this upcoming game. Tune in this week, the week of March 17th through the 20 something, 17th through the 24th. And I've got a little more time this week than I usually do, so I intend to have a few events, opportunities for people to log in to talk about Chronicles of Elyria, about the state of the Elyria that was released last week, and about game mechanics and different things about MMOs and other open world MMORPGs like Chronicles of Elyria. So if you're available and excited come Wednesday, we're going to be talking about oh gosh, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about storytelling and things like that. We're going to be talking about community events a little bit more, things like the Octoberfest, things like weddings, funerals, and we'll give some stories about things that have happened in other games in a little bit more detail, as well as, some more breakdown from the last state of Elyria, what we expect coming up, and like I said, storytelling and how do you develop and interact in a game that's so wide and varied as what we're expecting from the studio. Without further ado, this is Aspicis, and we've been here in the Ancient Grove, signing off. Until next time, folks.